On a frozen January night in 1993, the Baltic Sea swallowed a ship that should never have been lost. A vessel trusted by hundreds, pushed by schedules, weakened by time, and met by one of the most violent storms in modern European maritime history. This is the true story of the Jan Heweliusz, Poland's deadliest post-war sea disaster. A tragedy shaped not only by the brutal force of nature, but by hidden flaws, overlooked warnings, and decisions that would ripple through the maritime world for decades. Today, we dive deep beneath the Baltic waves to uncover what really happened, minute by minute, inside the doomed ferry. A story of courage, chaos, and the unforgiving power of the sea. This is the sinking of the Jan Heweliusz. The Baltic Sea on a January night can be a beautiful, deceptive thing. Its surface, often placid in summer, transforms in winter into a churning, icy cauldron, unforgiving and vast. For centuries it has tested the resolve of sailors, claimed ships and swallowed lives whole, leaving behind only the cold whisper of its depths. On January 13th, 1993, these waters were stirring with an ominous energy that belied the calm before the storm. In Świnoujście, Poland, a port city facing the open sea, the MV Jan Heweliusz, a ro-ro rail ferry, was gearing up for its regular overnight journey to Ystad, Sweden. It was a routine trip, one of thousands the vessel had made, a vital artery connecting the fledgling market economy of post-communist Poland with its Scandinavian neighbors. Yet this night would be anything but routine. It would become the stage for Poland's largest post-war maritime disaster, a tragedy born of formidable nature and fatal human error. Built in 1977 at the Trosvik Verksted shipyard in Brevik, Norway, the MV Jan Heweliusz was a rugged workhorse. Named after Johannes Heweliusz, a renowned 17th century Polish astronomer, the ferry was designed primarily for transporting railway wagons and trucks. At 125 meters long, with a beam of 17.5 meters, it was a substantial vessel, operated by the Polish Steamship Company out of Szczecin. Its design, typical of ro-ro ferries, featured expansive open-car decks to facilitate quick loading and unloading of wheeled cargo. This design, while efficient, carried an inherent vulnerability. Large, unobstructed decks could allow water to slosh freely, creating dangerous free surface effect and destabilizing the ship if water ingress occurred. The Heweliusz had not sailed through its 15 years without incident. Its history was dotted with minor collisions, a grounding, and notably 2 serious fires. In 1986, it underwent significant modifications, including the addition of an extra cargo deck and increased superstructure. While intended to boost capacity, these alterations raised the ship's center of gravity, subtly compromising its inherent stability. Though approved by the Classification Society Bureau Veritas, these changes would later become a focal point of the disaster's investigation, suggesting that the ferry was, in essence, a less forgiving vessel than it had been originally designed to be. The captain for this fateful voyage was Andrzej Ułanowicz, a seasoned mariner with 29 years of experience, 13 of them as captain. He was known for his professionalism and his cautious approach. On board with him were 28 other crew members, engineers, navigators, oilers, cooks, and stewards, a tight-knit community bound by life at sea. Below decks, in the passenger cabins, were 35 individuals, mostly truck drivers accompanying their cargo, but also a sprinkling of businessmen and others. They were a microcosm of cross-Baltic traffic, each with their own purpose, their own families, and their own expectations of a safe passage. As evening fell on January 13th, a formidable low-pressure system was deepening rapidly over the Baltic. Weather forecasts warned of an approaching severe gale, reaching force 10 on the Beaufort scale, with the potential to escalate to force 11 or even 12, hurricane force winds. Such conditions were not unprecedented in the Baltic winter, but they were certainly perilous. Despite the dire forecast, the Heweliusz was cleared for departure. The pressures of maritime commerce, the adherence to schedules, and perhaps a degree of ingrained familiarity with rough Baltic crossings likely played a role in the decision to sail. At 23:25 p.m., under a sky rapidly darkening with menace, the ferry slipped its moorings and departed from Świnoujście. Captain Heweliusz set a course towards Ystad, navigating the initial stretches of sheltered waters before heading for the open sea. For the first few hours the journey was rough but manageable. The Heweliusz, like any ship, pitched and rolled in the building waves, but its powerful engines held their course. Below deck, the 28 trucks and 10 railway wagons, some loaded with timber, others with various goods, were purportedly secured. Though later investigations would highlight deficiencies in cargo lashing, at that moment they seemed ready to face the sea. As the early hours of January 14th elapsed, the storm unleashed its full fury. The relatively calm gale escalated rapidly into a monstrous tempest. Winds howled at hurricane force, exceeding 12 on the Beaufort scale, with gusts reported to be over 160 kilometers per hour. Waves, once merely large, now became towering walls of water, estimated to reach heights of 6 to 8 meters, crashing over the ship's bow and slamming against its sides. The Heweliusz became a tormented toy in the grasp of an enraged sea. Below decks, the battle for survival began with insidious water ingress. The Heweliusz, like many ro-ro ferries of its era, had a stern ramp that, while convenient for loading, was a potential weakness. Investigations would later reveal that the stern ramp's locking mechanisms were faulty and that its watertight integrity had been compromised for some time. In these colossal seas, water began to force its way into the cavernous car deck. The effects were immediate and catastrophic. The deluge of seawater sloshing inside the immense open cargo deck created a massive free surface effect. The uncontrolled movement of such a large mass of water drastically reduced the ship's stability, accelerating its rolls and making recovery increasingly difficult. Concurrently, the violence of the ship's motion, exacerbated by the reduced stability, proved too much for the cargo lashings. Trucks and railway wagons, weighing many tons, began to break free, sliding across the deck, crashing into bulkheads and colliding with each other. This created two critical problems, further damaging the ship and its internal systems, and causing a rapid, severe and irreversible cargo shift. The ship, previously listing only slightly to port, now began to lurch violently. At first the list was manageable, and the crew scrambled to combat the ingress. They attempted to pump out the rising water, but the sheer volume proved overwhelming. The shifting cargo made movement on deck treacherous, and the efforts to resecure the trucks and wagons were largely futile. Around 3 a.m. the situation became critical. The Heweliusz developed an alarming list to starboard, estimated at 30 degrees, then rapidly increasing. The immense weight of water and the mass of unsecured cargo, shifting to one side, were proving too powerful for the ship's design and the crew's desperate efforts. Machinery started to fail. Pumps, overwhelmed by the volume of water, became ineffective. Engines, crucial for maintaining steerage and heading into the waves, began to sputter or cut out as the ship heeled over, starving them of fuel or interfering with their cooling systems. Chaos erupted on board. Alarms blared, their urgency slicing through the roar of the storm. Objects crashed and slid across decks, glass shattered, and the ship's structure groaned under immense strain. Passengers, jolted awake by the violence, stumbled from their cabins trying to comprehend the unfolding nightmare. Many were disoriented, trapped by the steep angle of the decks, or knocked off their feet. Captain Heweliusz, fully aware of the dire circumstances, fought valiantly to save his ship and the lives aboard. He ordered counter-ballasting, attempting to pump water into tanks on the port side to correct the starboard list, but it was too little, too late. The ship was losing its fight against the sea. He also tried to turn the ship to present its bow to the waves, hoping to reduce the rolling and gain some control. But the Heweliusz was no longer obeying his commands. The helm was unresponsive and the engines were failing. At approximately 4:36 a.m., with the ship listing dangerously and rapidly deteriorating, Captain Heweliusz knew their time was running out. He made the fateful call that no captain ever wants to make. "Mayday! Mayday! Jan Heweliusz! Starboard list! Immediate assistance!" The distress signal, picked up by maritime rescue coordination centers in Germany and Denmark, was a desperate plea echoing across the storm-ravaged Baltic. The response was swift, but the distance and the ferocity of the hurricane made immediate assistance impossible. Within minutes of the Mayday call, the Heweliusz began its final, terrifying descent. The ship's list increased exponentially, passing 60-70 degrees, until it was lying almost entirely on its starboard side, its mastheads dipping into the tumultuous waves. For those trapped below decks, the end was swift and brutal. Water rushed in through every opening, engulfing cabins and corridors. The screams of the dying mingled with the roar of the sea and the sound of twisting metal. For those who had managed to scramble onto the upper decks, it was a desperate struggle for survival. They clung to railings, to any fixed point, as the ship rolled over, turning its keel to the sky. The Heweliusz capsized completely in a matter of minutes, a vast dark shape in the pre-dawn gloom, its underside briefly exposed to the raging sky. Then, with a final, shuddering groan, it began to sink rapidly by the bow, dragging everything and everyone not swept clear into the frigid depths. The stern lifted high, a final defiant gesture, before disappearing beneath the waves around 4:50 a.m. The entire sequence, from the serious list to complete submersion, had taken less than 15 minutes. The Mayday call had triggered a full-scale international rescue operation. German and Danish maritime search and rescue teams sprang into action, despite the near-impossible conditions. German Navy Sea King helicopters, their powerful rotors battling the hurricane-force winds, were scrambled from bases in northern Germany. Saar vessels, like the German multi-purpose ship Arkona, began steaming towards the coordinates, though their progress was painfully slow through the mountainous waves. The scene that greeted the first rescuers was one of utter devastation. Debris, life rafts, and oil slicks marked the general area where the Heweliusz had gone down. Survivors, almost unimaginably, were spotted in the water. Some were clinging to the overturned hull of a life raft. Others were submerged up to their necks in the freezing sea, their bodies already succumbing to the cold. The rescue itself was an act of incredible heroism. Operating in pitch blackness, buffeted by hurricane winds, and blinded by spray, helicopter crews lowered winching lines to pluck survivors from the churning water. It was a brutal, physically demanding task. Many were too weak, too cold, or too injured to assist their own rescue. Several times the helicopters had to abort a hoist due to extreme turbulence or the risk of hitting the waves. Against all odds, out of the 64 people on board, 9 crew members were pulled from the icy grip of the Baltic. They were frostbitten, exhausted, and deeply traumatized, but alive. They were a testament to human resilience and the sheer will to survive. But for the other 55, including all 35 passengers and 20 crew members, the sea had claimed its due. Among the lost was Captain Heweliusz, who went down with his ship, a captain's final duty performed. In the weeks and months that followed, the wreck of the Jan Heweliusz was located on the seabed, lying on its starboard side at a depth of 27 meters, off Cape Arkona on the German island of Rügen. It became a silent, grim testament to the disaster. Efforts to recover bodies continued, with divers braving the cold and dangerous conditions. Only 22 bodies were eventually recovered. The remaining 33 were never found, their graves the depths of the Baltic. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Poland and the international maritime community. The grieving families, the public, and the maritime authorities demanded answers. Why had such a disaster occurred? How could a modern ferry, albeit with a history, simply vanish in a storm? The official investigation was complex and protracted. The Polish Maritime Chamber of Appeals conducted a thorough inquiry, and subsequent appeals stretched on for years. The findings pointed to a confluence of factors, a chain of events and pre-existing conditions, rather than a single cause. Inadequate stability. The 1986 modifications, which added superstructure and raised the ship's center of gravity, had severely compromised the Heweliusz' stability, making it far more vulnerable to heavy weather. Poor maintenance and structural deficiencies. Crucially, the stern ramp, vital for the ship's watertight integrity, was found to be in poor condition, allowing significant water ingress into the car deck. Other drainage systems were also found to be faulty. Improper cargo securing. Investigations revealed that the cargo, particularly the trucks and railway wagons, had not been adequately secured. This allowed for the devastating cargo shift that initiated and exacerbated the list. Decision to sail in severe weather. While difficult to attribute sole blame, the decision to depart in the face of hurricane force warnings was heavily scrutinized. Economic pressures and adherence to tight schedules were cited as possible influencing factors. Initial rulings by the Polish Maritime Chamber of Appeals placed significant blame on Captain Heweliusz for his decision to sail and for allegedly failing to take sufficient measures to stabilize the ship. However, subsequent appeals, notably by the Supreme Administrative Court, spread the responsibility more broadly, highlighting the systemic failures. The Polish Steamship Company, as the owner and operator, was heavily criticized for inadequate maintenance and supervision. The Classification Society, Bureau Veritas, was also found to be partly responsible for certifying a ship with compromised stability and inadequate maintenance. The sinking of the Jan Heweliusz remains etched in Poland's maritime history as its deadliest post-war disaster. Memorials stand in Świnoujście and other locations, silent tributes to the 55 lives lost. The wreck itself, still lying on the seabed, serves as an unofficial grave and a stark reminder of the sea's power. The tragedy contributed to significant reforms in maritime safety, particularly concerning ro-ro ferries. It underscored the critical importance of robust stability requirements, stringent cargo securing procedures, and rigorous maintenance regimes. It also intensified scrutiny of classification societies and the pressures faced by shipping companies. Directly and indirectly, such disasters influenced tighter international regulations, like the International Safety Management Code, which promotes a safety culture from the top down. For those who lost loved ones, the Jan Heweliusz is more than just a chapter in maritime history. It is a profound grief, a permanent void. It stands as a powerful testament to the inherent risks of working on the open sea, and a sobering lesson that even the most routine journeys can turn into unimaginable nightmares when human fallibility meets the unforgiving wrath of nature. The Baltic, in its cold, dark expanse, still whispers the names of those lost on that terrible January night. More than 3 decades have passed since the Jan Heweliusz vanished beneath the Baltic, yet its legacy remains unshaken. It changed safety regulations, reshaped maritime standards, and left behind families who still wait for answers the sea never returned. Disasters like this remind us that the ocean doesn't forgive, and that even the most routine journeys can become catastrophic when warning signs are ignored. Thank you for watching, and may the memory of those lost aboard the Jan Heweliusz never fade.